Legolas is a complex character, and there is far more depth to him even than to the wonderful portrayal Orlando Bloom gave him in the movie that made so many ladies fall in love with an elf prince. Legolas is even more friendly and helpful in the book. Thranduil, Legolas's father, was more a proud elven king of the Mirkwood realm, who was calculating and dutiful to his people, but kept to himself where others outside of the elven realm hardly saw him. Legolas was known around the different realms, and was more involved in the other races' affairs. Legolas grew to be more friendly and expanded his contact with the other races than his father ever could. For this reason, Legolas represents the extroverts of the elves, and the elves who prefer being around people and helping them out whenever in need. His famous quote in Return of the King book shows this extension of himself to always make others feel better even in the most darkest hours. Oft hope is born when all is forlorn. The ESFJ takes up the responsibility to help others and do the right thing, holding close to a certain moral compass that is created by their ability to empathize with others. ESFJs are known to be warm, caring, and hardworking. They are admired for their work ethic, perseverance, devotion, and steadfastness. They strive to practice what they preach, holding to their commitments and convictions, and as predominant feeler types, they take their work, family, and social roles rather seriously. Extraverted feeling is the dominant function in which ESFJs can appear outwardly confident and friendly, but struggle internally at times with a harsh critic and cautionary nature within that uses the outside world at times to process how they feel. They push themselves to always do the right thing for others, and even pushing aside their own needs for the collective group in a greater act of service to others. In other words, they have a very hard time saying no. When we first meet Legolas in the Fellowship of the Ring, he is at the Council of Elrond with his own message to give. He tells Elrond that Gollum had escaped from the Mirkwood prison, but not because the guards were not diligent in watching him, but because they were kind enough to allow Gollum to climb the outside trees daily for a breath of fresh air while in prison. Legolas, as the prince of the Mirkwood realm, under his father's rule, is the most forgiving of the two, understanding the empathy of the Mirkwood guards watching over the pitiful creature. He says, "Not through a lack of watchfulness, but perhaps through over-kindliness, and we fear that the prisoner had aid from others, and that more is known of our doings than we could wish. We guarded this creature day and night, at Gandalf's bidding, much though we wearied of the task. But Gandalf bade us hope still for his cure, and we had not the heart to keep him forever in dungeons under the earth, where he would fall back into his old black thoughts. In the days of fair weather we led Gollum through the woods, and there was a high tree standing alone from the other which he liked to climb. Often we let him mount up to the highest branches until he felt the free wind, but we set a guard at the tree's foot, and one day he refused to come down, and the guards had no mind to climb up after him. He learned the trick of clinging to boughs with his feet as well as with his hands, so they say, by the tree far into the night. It was that very night when orcs came and we battled them. By the time we drove the orcs off, Gollum was gone." Besides great empathy, he also showed a buoyant, sprite-like spirit that was known to make jokes with Gandalf and help ease the tension at times with the group. Legolas was also shown to be always sincerely curious in others around him. He was the first to ask about Merry and Pippin, and Gandalf's miraculous escape when they were being taken to Isengard. It is no wonder Legolas befriended Gimli as one of the first elves to do so in ages. He genuinely was interested in making friends with others and hearing their stories before making decisions and judging them fully. Extroverted feelers use their feeling function of the mind to weigh, evaluate, and analyze the responses to the world. This makes them have open compassion and understanding for others. An interesting part of this function is that because their emotions are the dominant process here, they often turn to art, music, or poetry to express their feelings. We see this with Legolas in the book, who sings often the songs passed down from his elven folk. And when taking them through Lothlorien, he breaks out into two lovely songs lamenting on the past when his sylvan kin used to dwell in the Lothlorien woods at one time in the earlier ages. He sings aloud with much deep emotion to the fellowship a beautiful song about being in the woods during the fall with the golden leaves, and also a sad song about Nimrodel of the evil in the mountains discovered long ago in Lothlorien. Legolas also becomes very open about being upset with the idea the Lothlorien elves want to blindfold the group since they have a dwarf with them, and no dwarves ever walk through. Legolas is clearly deeply involved with his emotions surrounding Lothlorien. Eventually, when Aragorn makes the suggestion that everyone be blindfolded, he agrees, seeing the logic of it all finally. Another example of being emotionally easily moved by beauty is when Gimli brought Legolas to the glittering caves of Helm's Deep. Legolas was speechless, just taking in the beauty around him, unable to speak, while Gimli describes its past. As you can see, he is not shy to express himself, allowing his true emotions to always come forth, but it is balanced well with his ability to be dutiful to help others when in need. The second most dominant function is his introverted sensing. I found it interesting to discover that Legolas's ability to sense the outside world was brought forth by his introverted sensing. On surface glance, one may think Legolas is an extroverted sensor, which means he looks at the here and now of the material world around him, noticing the details. But in the book, there is more evidence that what gives him such sharp elf eyes is his ability to also connect past memories to what he is actually observing in real time. Introverted sensing is focused on the subjective impression the object perceived gives. When they see an object or get a sensation from it, they can absorb an impression of it instantly, a subjective recollection or memory or symbol of the object attached to it. When Legolas, who was known to be the most tireless of the group, he was also known to use his keen eyesight and a sharp mind and a flexible body to help the group. When the fellowship got to the old elven realm of Hollin before their deeper journey into Lothlorien, he cautioned the group to be careful after Gandalf said, "Much evil must befall a country before it wholly forgets the elves, if once they're there." Legolas then said in response, "This is true, but the elves of this land were of a race strange to us of the sylvan folk, and the trees and the grass do not now remember them. Only I hear the stones lament them. Deep they delved us, fair they wrought us, high they builded us, but they are gone, they are gone. They sought the havens a long time ago." This is a moment of extreme introverted sensing example. He is hearing the voices from the rocks, but this is because his focus on the outside nature around him holds the past memories of what he knows about the elves that used to live in this realm. He cautions the group because he senses internally that the particular elves of Hollin are long gone from there, and all that remains are the hidden elves within Lothlorien. But this realm is open to all invaders. All that remains are the hidden elves within Lothlorien, Rivendell, and Mirkwood. But because his sensing is a high function, even though it is connected to his internal memories, his elf eyes see far ahead of what may come for them and what is on the way, because of his time as part of the other wars with the darker armies. His eyes are not like the eyes of Aragorn, who is mortal and sees much as a tracker in real time, without these elven memories attached. This is the secret of the elven skill of knowing where every arrow is coming from and where it may land. It is attached to past memories and the understanding of high probabilities of things happening once again as they did with the same type of servants of the Dark Lord, once just Melkor, but now in a new vessel of Sauron. Introverted sensing is a mysterious function that only introverted sensors will be able to relate to. Time moves differently for them. Be it slower or faster, introverted sensors don't experience the world in real time aligned with others. They move with an internal hunch attached to memories and patterns observed. They can see far into the future as well as look back into the past when observing the outside world. When Legolas is moving with the Fellowship through the snow on the way to Lothlorien, he watches the group with a slight smile on his face as he watches the whole group struggling, almost like he is looking in on them and just observing from outside. And he quickly remembers he does not need to move through the snow in the same slow fashion as the other humans, dwarves, wizards, and hobbits do. He uses his elf skills to leap up and move light as a feather over on top of the snow, and runs forward to try to find a better path of sunlight beyond the mountains blocking off the sun. "Farewell, Gandalf, I go to find the sun," he calls out and dashes forward, only coming back later with a little hope for the group to warm their bodies for a while. Finding the sun was a symbol he connected to the idea of being able to find a better path beyond the mountainside blocking out the sun's rays. Once again, his helpful nature pushes him to seek out a better way for the whole group experience. Being an introverted sensor as his second dominant function makes him an excellent archer and fearless fighter, in the books and in the movies. In the Return of the King book, in Amidst the Paths of the Dead chapter, when he is riding with the Grey Company, Legolas alone and Elrond's sons felt no fear for the Oathbreakers or the dead man of Dunharrow, as he remembered that the High Elves have power both in the worlds of the seen and the unseen. But his heart was also filled with caution when he heard the gulls at Pelgullir fulfilling Galadriel's prediction and warning where she gave the message. "Legolas Greenleaf, long under tree, in joy thou hast lived. Beware of the sea. If thou hear'st the cry of the gull on the shore, thy heart shall then rest in the forest no more." As you can see, his ability to use his internal memories and thinking processes with what he is perceiving of the outside world makes him into a great asset for the Fellowship. This does make a unique skilled marksman, as an extroverted sensor would be, since it also can allow his wisdom to be attached to the perils of the journey in symbols and in memories of the Elven realms, and this is what makes him a formidable Elven guard, helping Frodo and the others along the way. As he said openly while protecting Gimli from the Rohan riders, "He stands not alone, and you would die before your stroke fell." The third function is Extraverted Intuition. Extraverted Intuition scans for relationships or patterns within a pool of ideas, facts, or experiences. They look at people and the patterns of their behaviors to guide their hunches about others. This makes them great at sensing others and knowing people more deeply. Legolas was the first elf in a very long time to make friends with a dwarf. And so when he offered his friendship to Gimli that day on the battlefield, it was because he noticed the patterns of Gimli's behaviors during his time with him on the journey and knew he was no ordinary dwarf, but one who could be loyal and dutiful to others outside of his own needs. Dwarves were known to be somewhat of a selfish race to the elves, and Legolas was able to look past this and see Gimli for his true heart, not generalizing all dwarves as he got to know him. This is an example of extroverted intuition. This is an intuitive power that does not come from within first, but rather with looking at the world and keenly observing others and patterns around you to make decisions, and then move your life through that. Legolas is full of caution, and though friendly, he holds high ideals for himself and for others. When he befriends Gimli the dwarf, this is suggesting his ability to go outside of himself and look more internally into others around him. Oftentimes, extroverted intuitives do not spend as much time looking inwards as they do with looking outwards at the external world. But we see a delicate balance here, as Legolas represents a self-aware elf prince who knows his skills and his internal workings very well, to understand his needs as well as the needs of others around him. The last and least used or inferior function is the introverted thinking. People with introverted thinking want the world to make sense in a logical way. They form an internal framework of how the world works. It is constantly being modified and improved through life experiences and experiments that they go through within their own mind. Introverted thinking's goals is to create a web of knowledge in which everything is interconnected. This being his last function used in his mind makes it the weaker, but still very much used daily. Legolas is logical, and he forms his opinions about the outside world based on logical deductions he makes. Introverted thinkers can be quiet with their thoughts, not exactly saying what they are thinking at the moment, but processing quietly until someone asks them. One of the examples of this is when Legolas did not want to go into Moria when the vote was being had. But the Fellowship did not know this until he was asked his opinion on it, and then he simply replied, "I do not wish to go to Moria." Though his more dutiful nature towards others as the dominant feeling type persuaded him to go even though it was the last place he wanted to venture into. Once again, his feelings of wishing to help the group overrides his logical calculations of the dangers lurking today in Moria. Same thing with Fangorn Forest. He was reluctant to first enter Fangorn, having no knowledge or personal experience attached prior to just hearing stories of the Ents and of the forest as he was a little boy. He also heard that it was very old and filled with angry thoughts from the trees. So here you can see complex thought of his always attached to memories or emotions that he has. All of these functions together make Legolas a friendly and resourceful character within the Fellowship. As the Mirkwood Forest Realm Prince, he truly is a nice guy in his respectable nature and dutiful ways. And in the end, we are seeing the peak of this when in the book's final conclusion, he decided to sail west to Valinor, the Undying Lands, and take Gimli with him for the rest as well. He is courteous and quick to laughter, but his extraordinary extrasensory abilities as an introverted sensor makes him a valiant scout and fighter amongst the servants of the Dark Lord.